Well, I think there's two things to consider. The first is for a ranch or a rancher who's been in, let the fires come through the ranch. It's really a disaster. I mean, you may have lost animals, you may have lost fences and kind of the ranch infrastructure. Anybody who's had to build a fence lately knows how expensive that is. And so we have that, but we also have right now, at least in calf prices in a lot of markets, record high prices. And so if you've lost some of your cows or maybe your entire herd, the calves that were going to be born this spring, if you've lost them too, we're headed towards record high prices. And so you've lost that you may have lost calves, you've lost cows that are increasing in value. And for ranchers in a lot of parts of Texas who have been affected by drought over the last couple of years, and over the last couple of years, really low calf prices relative to our costs that are higher. It's really a real disaster for that individual ranch. The other part to consider, though, is the overall market. And we think about beef prices to consumers because we've all seen record high beef prices. In fact, we had record high beef prices that hit a new record back in July of last year and drifted a little lower, but they're still really high. We're producing less beef in the US, which is driving those cattle prices higher. It keeps the pressure on for higher beef prices. But in the overall market where the fires have affected, even though that area is so large, compared to the whole industry in the US, those are pretty localized effects. And so we really shouldn't expect an effect on consumer beef prices because of the fires.
Are you able to give us some statistics, numbers in terms of those uh, beef prices? Or maybe when you're talking about the cost of building the fence, what is that number looking like?
Sure, well, for example, building a fence, you depending on the type of fence that it is, the type of wire, you may be looking at quotes like $3 a foot if you had to go hire someone to do it. So if there's 5,280 feet in a mile, if you have to build a mile of fence, that's a lot of money. And so that gives you an idea of the scale. And the biggest fire has burned over 1 million acres. So how much fencing is in that might need to be repaired? And many ranchers are going to do that themselves, but you still got to go buy material. So that's one thing. The cows, in a cow herd, you have cows from young ones with all of their productive life left to some that are pretty old. And so if we think about a value of cows, we may be talking $2,000 per animal over that whole herd. Calf prices, we've had calf prices where calves have been $3 a pound in some local markets. And so we're talking 1,500 to $2,000 per calf. And so those dollar amounts are big at the individual ranch.
Because I was speaking with a few other people yesterday over the phone, and some of them were saying that the market is actually doing pretty good over the last 9 months. Is that correct? I heard you say it's the highest it's ever been, but then I heard that. So could you clarify that for me?
Sure. So over the last, say, it really into like the first half of last year, or excuse me, the second half of last year, we had rapidly increasing cattle prices as our herd got smaller. We still have good demand from consumers for beef, and it's pulling those prices higher. So we've had rising prices, and just lately in some of our local markets, we've had all-time record high prices. And our old record highs were back in 2014 and 2015, really following our big drought of 11 and 12 that drove cattle numbers down. And as ranchers started expanding their herds, really nationwide, we saw higher prices. And so now we've hit new record high prices. And the expectation is we're going to see higher calf prices over the next couple of years.
But now that thousands have been wiped out, you're saying that would it have a major, if yeah?
Well, so if we think about that a little bit and kind of put the numbers in context, we have, according to USDA statistics for January 1 of this year, we have 4.1 million beef cows in Texas. Our total inventory of all cattle was 12 million. But a lot of those are in feedlots. We have a large dairy industry. So those animals are, while a lot of those are in the Texas Panhandle, those are confined in feedlots and dairies and have not been impacted directly by the fires. So we're talking about sort of beef cows that are out on ranges and pastures. So those numbers are relatively small. And if we looked in the northern panhandle across all of those counties, those are relatively small numbers compared to the whole state and compared to the 28.2 million beef cows in the whole US. So
Okay.
that's why I think it's worth thinking about the individual ranch where this is devastating. In the
Mhm.
total market, these are still relatively localized effects. And so for the rest of us consumers, we're not likely to see any kind of market impacts or price impacts.
Okay. And even here in East Texas locally, you were saying we probably won't be seeing those effects either, more just the people in that area where the fires are happening.
Right. Even for ranchers in East Texas, our calf prices really aren't likely to see much of an impact of these fires at all. It does reduce the total cow herd in the state and in the nation. But again, compared to 28.2 million beef cows in the whole US, it's going to be relatively small because it is localized. I mean, 1.1 million acres in that big fire is a lot of acres. Uh, and there's certainly a lot of cows affected, but compared to that whole industry, those are relatively localized effects.